I think we can just dive right into the agenda for today. I think we're hoping to get done by Zoom. And if that's not the case, we may be able to go a little bit long. I know closer event is usually about 11, but we'll try and push through in hopes that we can wrap up the work of the work group today. And if that's not the case, we'll have a conversation at the end about what that looks like. So with that, thank you all for being here today. And we'll start with agenda item 1, request to include Metro Transit Telecommunicators in the new MSRS administered subplan. And I'll turn it over to Susan Lincheski.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, everybody. Joanne, Scott. And also thanks to DAR. We are talking about Metro Transit Telecommunicators. I just wanted to mention that you have a summary, or excuse me, you have a job description in the materials here. I hope you all had a look at it. The behind the scenes stuff was that I contacted, somebody gave me a reference, I believe, to some TMSA folks. They are the Transit Managers and Supervisor Association. I had a couple of meetings with them. And then also with, I guess we'll call management with Metro Transit and Met Council. And everybody seems to believe that this group is very much like your typical 911 telecommunicators. I think that was also something that Dar said when she was introducing the concept. So that's all I'll say. One thing I will mention is this is very much not like the forensic investigators. So this, I think, falls into the scope of what we were supposed to focus here with these seem to be very much within the scope of the traditional 911 telecommunicator. So this isn't going beyond, it's just sort of defining who would be considered a telecommunicator. There are 2 people here who can talk about this. One is Michael Holston, another is Antoinette Rathone, and I believe Kathy Fagali. So these last 2 are with Metro Transit, I believe, and Michael is also with Metro Transit. So if come and talk, yeah.
Hi all, thanks for having me. My slide up there. My name's Mike. I work over at the Transit Control Center. I'm manager of training over there, so I train all the new people that come in. So what we have 31 full-time positions. We're expanding at this point. But our duties, 100% of our employees are either a dispatcher or a telecommunicator at any given time. The schedule can change. We have our title is Transit Control Center Supervisor. So the reason for that is we have to have an eye on where the buses are, where the trains are, and our crimes or the things that we respond to are mobile, not quite static like they are at a normal crime scene. Ours can be mobile, they can move around. So our bus supervisors act as telecommunicators. Our dispatchers are purely dispatchers. We are cross-trained. Everybody in there can do everything. We take emergency 911 calls, emergency telephones on platforms, alarms from buses with emergencies to dispatch police. We start ambulances or fire, whatever it might be, as we process calls. So our jurisdiction, we cover 900 square miles, almost on Rhode Island. It says 85 cities, 8 counties, depending on who you have, what's they look at, between 7 and 9 counties. Ours says both. So somewhere there, I don't think 8 is right. A little bit about our stats, our officers. We currently have, last I heard, and this is just the number I heard, so 140, we're authorized for 171. Right now, it makes us 14th largest police department in Minnesota, out of 400 agencies. Our call volume, we've handled more than 73,000 calls for service in the last year. Whether officer initiated or dispatch initiated, they all involve us. We touch every single call, reporting every single call. sending out 2 calls. And there's a breakdown up there. Dispatch initiated calls, so calls that come into us, 30,000. Officer initiated 42,000. But this is where the transit control centers or the telecommunicators, police dispatchers, and bus operations coordinators. Basically. So we are assisting the bus down the street. We're assisting rail. We're assisting every department in there. We dispatch to where the emergency is at the time. The difference of us and a regular PSAP again, that our stuff moves. We kind of have to have knowledge of where the buses are, trains are, to get them to stop, to know what's going on, what they need. We answer the emergency telephones located at all the bus rapid transit platforms. We take public calls, manage radio traffic, or managing bus operator traffic, trip transit rider investment program agents. We take their calls and dispatch police for them. Street field supervisors, and you see the vans driving around once in a while. Yeah.
If I ask you a question,
Yeah.
just distinguish for me, you say telecommunicators and dispatchers, those seem like they're 2 different sets of duties, but you're just articulating that.
So telecommunicator, I'm thinking about probably saying it wrong, but more of a call. They're the ones answering the 911 calls. So the bus supervisor, their duty would also be answering the calls. The 911 calls that come in or whatever other calls. The dispatcher doesn't answer calls from the public. They're solely sending police to a scene or following the cab. They're using the cab to dispatch the officers as we go. So they're responding to the call. The call takers or telecommunicators are the ones processing the 911 call and sending it to our dispatch. Or then sending our officers. Does that make sense?
That's helpful. Thank you very much.
So continuous communication with our operators is critical. So both police and operations receive exact real-time updates as we're. Anybody else have any questions for me?
What is an e-teles?
Emergency telephone, it's a call box basically that comes in directly to us. They're not at every stop, they're at all of the bus rapid transit stops, which are.
May I ask you a question? So with respect to like your dispatch initiated, officer initiated calls that you have there, so those are not necessarily emergency calls, right? I mean, those are.
Those are all calls that the officer, no, not necessarily. They're all calls that we either send an officer to, which are mostly the dispatch initiated. Our calls for they're called, they might not be emergencies, music or something, but it's still the officer initiated calls are kind of a mix. If they're running into something that they see, that's the officer initiated call. Or if they're checking a building or on a detail, like the twins detail or something like that, that's officer initiated. Yeah,
And like, can you talk about how that's similar or dissimilar from a regular PSAP, like at a local county level, to your knowledge?
It's pretty much the same. It's, you call 911, you're gonna get routed to wherever you are. Geofencing, the only reason I think that we are really not a primary PSAP is basically geofencing. We can't it's not, our GPS coordinates aren't good enough to geofence a soul of lost or trains. Just getting there, but it's not there yet. I think, just like somebody calls 911 for an emergency, or you'd be surprised at what they call. Either way, somebody is there processing that call, saying you need, fire, medical, police, or other mental health services, whatever it might be. And ours is no different. We do the same exact thing. The only difference is we have an added responsibility as our cluster to keep things moving as we go. Does that make sense?
So if I'm at a bus and I call 911, where does it go? Does it go directly to you? But do you have?
You're gonna go to wherever you want, highway or freeway, you're gonna go to state, you're gonna go to Minneapolis or Grant County. As soon as you say where you're at, you get your.
Like transfers from? Okay.
Well, I understand Antoinette is on the, in the chat or in the Zoom. Do you have anything to add, Antoinette?
Good morning, all. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have much to add. I believe that Mike has covered it. I am the assistant director of our field operations team, so I oversee our transit control center and also a prior transit control center supervisor. What he has described is exactly what we do. We are just uniquely set up as we are a transit agency with our own police department. And so the supervisors within the transit control center definitely carry out not only those 911 emergency dispatch needs, as well as that responsibility for managing our system while buses are out in the field. So taking those calls, not just from the general public, but from our transit customers, our operators as well, when it comes to standard, non-standard, emergency and non-emergency calls in their day-to-day work for every member of the team.
Question in the room, Susan?
Antoinette and maybe Kathy as well, who I believe is on. When I talked with you, you were okay, I believe, with the employees here, the Metro Transit dispatchers, telecommunicators being in this plan, and you were also okay with a 2% increase in the employer contribution to a new plan. Can you maybe confirm that?
I can confirm when it comes to the increase, as that is not my area of expertise, I will defer to Cassie for that one as it pertains to including the TCC group within this proposed legislation. Yes, I am on board with that. I believe that when we looked at the definitions of how they would qualify, their work definitely matches that description to have them included. I believe that although the scenarios may be different, they definitely do the same work as it pertains to how they navigate within the system for that public safety need.
This is Cassie Figali. On the whole, the Metropolitan Council is neutral on both the inclusion and the 2%.
Just for my knowledge, what role is Cassie at Metro?
Sure. I'm the Assistant Director of Labor Relations here at the Council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's good clarification. Other questions, comments from the room?
Sure.
Yeah.
Based on what I've heard and in my, of course, knowledge, having worked in public safety for 31 years, it appeared to me that they meet that definition, and obviously I'd speak in favor in allowing them to be part of it based on what I've heard, the call volume, et cetera. And I think Dar pointed out that as technology improves, we'll probably see a difference where maybe they're going to get more calls actually directly sent rather than rerouted, but it's not unlike the state control. Sometimes they get a call that's for a local agency and it gets routed. It sounds very much the same from what I'm hearing. So thank you.
And with those classifications, it's 31 total, right? Telecommunicators, but dispatchers that fall into
It's all in one, yeah. Right
31.
now, we have 31 employees. And we're hiring 4 more as 5. It could grow. It may not.
I have a question too. 31. One of the things I think we're talking about is supervisors.
That doesn't include managers.
That's not, okay.
30. Total.
Okay.
Now I'm missing the picture, so sorry, I'm missing something.
I'm sorry, I keep on just interrupting, but, so I think that with respect to the MSRS side, we've had some conversation between public safety and DOC with some titles and like go with DOC adding regional director and director. So it's just, I mean, you may want to, review that, and Cassie, and Jeanette, you may want to look at those titles as well for inclusion, so maybe we're all in the same kind of like the same spirit, speaking with the same focus. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is there anyone online who has a comment or question?
Hey, this is Joe Matthews. Quick question. Do we know, or do you have a rough breakdown? I mean, it sounds like the majority of the calls that this group receives are emergency related. Is that accurate? Or is there kind of a percentage of kind of emergency versus non-emergency calls? Does anybody have that stat?
I do not have that stat. By the time I knew I was doing this, I had to do an information request. And we work for state, we know how that kind of works. So I did not get that stat. I do not know off the top of my head. It's hard to say if you're talking phone calls versus alarm. I don't know. I can't answer that accurately, I guess, but
And I would just say, when you say emergency, I think does it need a response from law enforcement or their services? That's the key, whether it's an emergency or not. Regardless, you know, are you asking for a public safety response that they are providing?
Thank you. I think that's helpful. And I don't know. If this is the last meeting, I don't know that we'll get an answer, but thanks for the response.
It might be useful to have that information if this is incorporated into the report, so that we can rationalize why we added that. Just possible to have it, you know, between now and February.
right, I'll send it to Susan. I'll do the information request.
I just want to clarify, what are you asking for exactly? Because he has the calls for service up there. Those are calls for service that were initiated, or what are you trying to pull out here?
I think just to clarify, I think if we had an idea of how many calls you receive and then how many require a response, that would be helpful. Just, I think something to just support the conversation that we're having around how they would fit with the other PSABs. I think it would just be helpful so that we don't leave the legislature or others with lots of questions about, you know, how they're different. I think the explanation in the room was helpful to me.
I think a good way to look at it might be that, you know, we're transit supervisors, like Antoinette said, we're a transit company that has a police dispatcher, police officer, police department. And those police need a dispatcher. They need somebody to answer those calls, and that's what we do. On top of that, we do some other stuff as far as operations with the bus. Because that's a necessity when we are answering these calls. So it's a little different in that that's not.
Can I jump in for a sec?
Go ahead.
This is Eli Miller. I'm also on the Transit Managers and Supervisors Association. Those were the calls for service. Those are all requests for police. Is your question like which one came via 911 versus via the administrative line? Because those are all requests for police in those stats that Mike presented.
No, I think just to be more specific, I think one of the challenges is it's confusing to the audience, you know, if you're not familiar with your organization.
Joe,
Oh,
Joe, we have some audio issue.
Hear yourself twice.
Is there someone who just logged in?
So let's try again.
okay, sorry. I think just to help, when you've described the agency and in the conversation, what seems to muddy it is when you say that they dispatch. Sometimes it sounds like we're saying, well, they do deal with the police dispatch, but they're also dispatching kind of like the vehicles. And that's the part where I think it gets confusing. Is it a PSAP that only deals with kind of the emergency response and kind of guiding the officers? Or do they have other duties? And if they have both, just emphasizing how much of it is on the emergency side, I think is helpful to just kind of quantify how similar they are to the other PSAPs.
Eli, I got it. I think, so the difference between, or what we do, we have basically 3 jobs in one. We have a police dispatcher, we have a bus supervisor, we have a call taker. A normal PSAP would just have a dispatcher and a call taker, and a data channel. But ours has an extra part to it. So when I train them to be a bus supervisor. I then train them to be a call taker, 911 call taker, and I train them to be a police dispatcher. So our duties are the same as a PSAP, with the exception of we have an added duty to do a few other things with buses, keep them on route, keep them going, fix mechanical stuff. When we are doing that, our bus supervisors are doing the call taking job at the same time. They're taking 911 calls or other calls. Our police dispatchers are only doing police dispatch at that time. They're not taking calls, just like a regular dispatcher at Minneapolis, let's say what. We are interchanged, we're all cross-trained. One day I could be on police dispatch, the next day I could be a call taker, bus supervisor. The next day I'd be whatever. So does that help clarify it a little bit?
I think that's super helpful. And I'm not trying to throw sand in the gears. I think what we need to think about in terms of as we package this up for the legislature, the other PSAPs, their staff don't have like other duties. They're on emergency response the whole shift. And part of the argument that we've all made in support of a new plan is the stress and kind of the demands of the job. And so as we add groups, I think we just want to make sure that we can demonstrate that the stress and the demands are equal. And if the really intense part that the other PSAPs have 24/7 is one of 3 jobs that are in this one, I just think we need to be able to explain that so that the legislature doesn't feel like this group is different.
Yeah.
So State Patrol, for instance, has other duties as well. So they dispatch for Fish and Wildlife, they dispatch for DNR, they have a Fugitive Task Force, PCA, agents that they're responsible for. So are those straight up lights and sirens emergencies? No. Are they responsible for officers or others that are using the radio and need communication and need that safety and that top cover? Yeah. You know, and Dar, maybe you can speak to this too. I think there's other PSAPs that, you know, help out with mental health response, things like that. So again, like, are those lights and sirens emergencies? No. Do they have a responsibility to keep those folks safe? Absolutely. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the same thing with bus. You're keeping the bus safe.
Yeah, and we have, I mean, as far as the mental health aspect, we have had people leave out PTSD. We have had, people seek psychiatrists, psychologists. For every person that has a call taker, dispatcher, you ask has a call they won't tell you about, and a lot else. But we're no different than that.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say the duties of in a PSAP or any 911 center is diverging quite rapidly. You know, we're being asked constantly to add this, add this, add this. But Metro Transit is unique, but they are still a communication. Yeah, but I think it can get confusing, and we have to be accurate so people don't think that we don't fit the bill. So that's why I asked, you know, when you go back and collect data, what are you being asked to collect? Because the data is there. Those are the calls that you dispatch to your law enforcement agency.
I was just gonna say, I agree. I think your description is very valid. I also agree that you probably do need to include your supervisors, just as the idea of the conversations that we've had, so that should be included. Chisago County dispatchers just spent like an hour and a half on the phone talking to somebody and like stopping a suicide like yesterday or the day before. I also know Metro Transit spends an enormous amount of time dealing with lots of different mental health issues and different things going on in the metro. We depend on them. I have kids living down here too, right? And there's a lot of things that we depend on, and I think that this is a very valuable place that needs to be included. The conversations we're having, I think, are more about what goes in that report. And so I'm not trying to cut us off. At the same time, I think I don't know if anybody's in disagreement with that. I think it's just what goes in that report. And we can have that included as part of that, as we're discussing the report. I mean, I don't know if we need a vote or if we want to call a vote, or if we just, I think they meet our criteria of what we want included.
And on our website, there's officer staff, that was the way they included inside and out. So kidnappings, murders, suicide, we've had every type of call that we have staff. Maybe not the same volume as Minneapolis, but definitely more of a volume than maybe a tiny county somewhere that or city that doesn't have many calls. Obviously, we don't call them. So there is something to it, and you know, I'm always available if anybody has questions on it or you want to see it.
We will include another row on our assignment list, and it will be assigned to Michael and either Cassie or Antoinette. We will get descriptions from them of this group, and then we will, you know, Alina's going to do a lot of work with trying to incorporate this into the rest. So that's just great. And probably the better way for the vote, for a lot of reasons having to do with open meeting and things like that. Rather, if anybody has an objection, why don't you let us know? But otherwise, it's better not to take a vote, but just acknowledge that we have.
So does anyone, oh, Erin?
I don't have an objection. Could I get a list of the people? So we have not included that group in our actuarial analysis. So I don't foresee it being a big shift. But yes, a list of names of the employees.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yes.
Those things that are in the general plan, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
MSRS. Yes. So para is not involved in this one. This is.
So then let me ask, are there any objections to including the Metro Transit telecommunicators in the subplan? So I do think it will be helpful to have the narrative that you give us, and I'm just thinking back to our early meetings when we had to have, you know, deliver the news to some of the groups that they were not going to be included in our work. And so if we are going to include a new group at a relatively late hour, I think we should have a rationale for that. So anything staff can do to make sure that's documented in the report, I think will be helpful. Tammy Jo?
And I don't think this is a new group. I think this is I would make the argument, I think this is a group that just has a different title.
Right.
That there's, as Dara explained as well, they're dispatchers, they just have a different title. And we've ran into that in a couple different areas with probation as well. This is not a separate group. This is just a group that's part of our groups that just has a different title.
Sure. And I don't disagree with that at all. I just think that someone might say, well, we asked early on if we could be included in the report. So anything we can do to make sure we're on the up and up with our work. Their comment. I agree. Okay. Okay, any other discussion on agenda item 1? Very good. Well, thank you. And thank you for coming today, especially on the holiday week at short notice. We really appreciate it. So moving on then to the second item, plan features for a new MSRS administered subplan, and that's a holdover from a past meeting.
Yeah, I'm gonna take this one. So we're looking at a memo. This memo has gone around, I think now for a couple different meetings. But I've put in red sort of the things that I think are outstanding. Looking forward, I put together a draft bill for the Clara plan. I have not had time to do that for the MSRS plan. But when looking at the Para bill, a lot of similar language will go into the MSRS bill.
One thing that will be different is that the MSR bill will have an amendment for employer-employee contribution amounts. One that has employer contribution increase and one that does not have employer contribution increase. That's what a bill talk. I think going through this memo, these are just things that I sort of finality on that are in red so that I can put together the bill. And there's really not a lot. The first one that we will also have to think about for the parent plan is what are we calling these new plans? Everyone has ideas.
I don't have ideas in place. So my Cassie say 2% increase to employer contribution, not sure where the 2%. Because but their request to the DOC public safety is 1.25%. Obviously, we have serious budget constraints. So as I mentioned, particularly like we're in opposition to that increased employer contribution, but in particular, why the difference 2.0 versus 1.
Got a cost increase of 5.5% for what was laid out in the pictures for some time now. That was coming from Aaron Jenkins at MSRS, and so we had 3.5% employee contribution increase, 2% employer contribution increase. I don't know where the 1.25% came from. So that was what had been discussed, unless I don't know, Devin, you haven't.
I think this was based off our discussion last meeting was when Mike and I were talking about generally employer contribution increases, but at a minimum for 1.25.
Just so this isn't one of the red items, but the opt-out provision. So recently we spoke with the legal counsel folks and we cannot provide the opt-out provision because of the IRS regulations. We have existing opt-outs for 2 of our subplans. Those are okay because they existed prior to 1985. So I assumed that we could provide that in this because we've got those that exist. We've got IRS determination letters that allow those. So we are looking for some creative ways to allow people to, or not allow, but mandate that if they're over a certain age at the time the plan is implemented, that they would not participate. It seems that that's where most folks are lying. If they're 60 or older already, they aren't wanting to participate in it. That would actually reduce the cost too. So I just wanted to share that publicly and apologize because I made some assumptions.
You're still exploring whether you can exclude them or you see.
So we can't do an opt-out where they're making a choice, but we potentially could write the legislation so that anyone over a certain age is not in the plan, let's see in the general plan. But if we're researching the age discrimination laws to make sure we're not violating, don't need to violate the or get in a lawsuit.
I did, and I'm just clarification is, so you're saying that it would reduce the cost if you have an option to exclude people of that age?
No option,
Or not option, it would be.
yes, if you were in, do not include people who are 60 or older, it is less expensive.
Okay. I'm sorry. No, that's okay. I think that's all well and good. I've noted that there won't be an opt-out. There'll be some sort of like mandatory exclusion, and we're just sorting out details on that. So I won't write anything until I hear more from MSRS. We circulate around a bill on that, and everyone can see what it is. I'll try to really explain exactly what's been written. I think that puts us back at number 1, which is I think
Could we just call it the probation and telecommunicator pension plan?
I can raise it.
So
It's the acronym. Well, it's the EMT plan, I think like, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want, I think one of the core components that all of us agreed on is that this is continuum of public safety. So do we want public safety probation? Okay. Shake your head no. What's your thought?
So there's been a big focus of this group on limiting. If we talk about public safety, that does mean, of course, police and fire, potentially corrections as well. So I think there's confusion that we would work into this plan. Also, at the end, which we probably won't have time for, but we had done some research on other state plans. A lot of other state plans that are called public safety plans include probation. Some even include telecommunicators, but so probation. So I think if we introduce the term public safety, I think there is going to be some confusion about who gets.
I would just a suggestion, just be specific. Yeah, that's your file. I just want to say though, that is the title, public safety telecommunicator, that's. So it is in there somewhere in the document that we have to see that.
But it's a matter of words. Yeah. I mean, you write a sentence and you got a, 10-word plan. Can't even penetrate statute as it is, but they're doing that. So public safety telecommunicator is the defined term, not changing.
Similar question of this probation and telecommunicator.
Point of clarification that we don't have probation officers, we have corrections agents. It doesn't actually, I mean, if you want it to be accurate, right, it's corrections agent on the MSRS side. But if we think that it needs to mirror, I mean, I get that too. Same thing with us. We don't control our. Sorry, it's more complicated to say.
Simplicity seems beneficial. Because probation, you can even say probation and parole, that seems like we're just kind of boiling, supervisory officer. I mean, it gets pretty complex quick and seems like simple is better.
Tammy Jo.
And I would say actually, police and fire, you're looking at deputies. You're not looking at police, you're looking at state patrol officers, you're running into that in all things. Everybody understands probation terminology probably easier. The community corrections officers, we have different terminology. As long as we all understand the definition underneath, I think those titles still fit and we can keep it simplified at the top. Because nobody actually understands probation. I mean, that's one of the things we've been battling through this whole concept. And so and telecommunicators, they have different titles all the way through. I would not be opposed to keeping it at probation and telecommunicators and understanding our definitions to find it underneath.
Devin?
That was my thing, is their probation officer means state employee, blah, 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 and names all the things underneath. The title is nomenclature. There's no effect or it's actually included or excluded.
That's a very fair point. To clarify, are we just talking about the MSRS title? Probably all documents are MSRS. Yeah, because like I think for us we want slightly different. But
Okay, so you're just repeat it one last time and we'll see if anyone objects to what we think we've settled on here.
I don't know. I thought that was the title of the top and I don't think Amy does one.
this is MSRS, right?
Oh, I thought this was the whole thing.
We want to use the same name for both.
So what we were talking about is one, we like local government in our title. Because it's a local government correctional plan and we can separate out what this MSRS state is. And then for us, local government, it matches our correctional plan. And if we could have telecommunicators and probation officers, so we don't end up with two P and F and then a P and T.
But in our statute, our title of our statute, we can still be the top, can be just simple. Right? And we're not gonna divide this all. It's gonna be divided in underneath.
I think Amy's saying, so for our internal purposes, a lot of times we shorten the names of our plan. So like our general plan, we call it PERP. And the fund is, for the actuaries, we have a specific fund name. And for our financial statements, we have a specific fund name. So I think they're trying to mirror what they do for the correctional plan, for their trust and fund from a financial perspective. So I don't know if that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, because in our statute for the correctional plan, it refers to as the local government correctional service retirement. So like, I would like to mirror that when we're talking about here. We're getting into semantics and wording here, but we do like consistency. And when we are abbreviating our plans, it's easier for us to have some distinction in plans, right? We talk about the general plan, we talk about the police and fire plan, the correctional plan. And it'd be nice to have like telecommunicators and operational TNP instead of another PNT. We have PN.
I think this is TP now.
Right, yeah.
We'll figure it out.
So could we do state telecommunicator and probation pension plan?
It's a sub plan of our big plan, so to me, it's already part of the general plan. It's just, so I'm fine with probation officers and public safety telecommunicators.
Probation and telecommunicator pension plan
Is our
for MSRS.
And then we'll figure it out.
I think that moves on just to eligibility. And really, we already know that we will be adding to paragraph A, some employment positions for Metro Transit. And then I have 2 items in red, that's 5 and 6. I'll say an early thank you to Leah and Paula for sending me their part of the report, which I think confirms that 5 and 6 should be added as written here. But
I do have a point of clarification now. So because since you have essentially given 2 employer contribution rates, 2 employee contribution rates, and what I sent over indicated that the additional language having this provision with essentially permits new titles to be added after the fact for discretion of the commissioners, right? That is like a sub, if you will. So if there's no contribution increase, we're open to having that addition, right? More inclusion, adding more titles in the future. But if there's an expectation of additional employer contribution, that we are not bring that part. So I don't know if you can parse that out as well. So essentially 2 bills. Does that make sense?
so tell me what you are.
B.
Okay, all of paragraph B.
Yeah.
When I do like the amendment that takes out employer contribution, that would also. Okay, that.
Page actually for DPS as well. We did, so notice that we sent a different separate document from this. So Alina, if you're able to, because I think she's got a different title on hers as well. So you may want to make sure you have the most up-to-date job titles in there. I sent it.
Yeah, I thought I compared them and I didn't see the front, maybe I missed it.
We'll check. Thank you.
I think that was all.
Did you have what you need?
I think that was all I needed unless someone sees something in this memo that they don't want. Which maybe Devin.
I wanted to clarify, I think something got, that's not clarified, but Paula, that, for the number 5% sorry, so division B is contingent on it being only employee paid, correct? But I think for the amendment, when you repeated it back to her, that it was inverse. So if
Okay. Got it.
Karen?
For the early retirement age, I thought we were doing an early retirement age of 55.
I think we had said, since it was actuarially equivalent. No, cared, so we went down to 50, but if it makes a difference. 55. I can do it that way too.
I'll have to ask. Those two. Is it 55? It's their full retirement age is 55 and their early retirement is 50. So it's 5-year difference. Same with state patrol.
I think that was the understanding.
Issues with taking it, wow, we look better.
Yeah, so what, I think what we had sent yesterday was similar to what correction or DOC is looking at, on the definitions. Under EPS's telecommunicators part. Adding B under number 3, whom the Commissioner of Public Safety or the Commissioner's delegate certifies as having substantial responsibility for receiving, processing, transmitting, or dispatching emergency and non-emergency calls for law enforcement, fire, emergency medical, and other public safety services, or supervising employees eligible under clause 1. So they're very similar. Yeah, we're trying to be inclusive of other job titles within this structure of PSAP.
Just read what's in this. document.
Yeah.
Oh, this is DOC. DOS is the first one. That's exactly what.
Right. Oh, I apologize. I missed that. Sorry, everybody. Totally just wasted 5 seconds of your time.
It's just parsed out differently.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. Yep.
I think that does it for the MSRS subplan. Together. Yep.
Yeah. You got it. Let's move on to item 3, which is plan features for a new PERA administered plan. I'm just taking that right now. Oh, done.
So this is just, we talked about replacement ratio. This is the 3rd time, so I won't really get into a lengthy explanation. But we wanted to put them kind of all in one place. So you can see the progression from looking at the general plan, what replacement ratios look like at retirement, including Social Security, at full retirement, which is age 66. Full career and full retirement age. And then it goes from there to showing what the general plan provides to someone retiring at age 60. So that's the early retirement. It shows Social Security kicking in at age 62. Their general benefits starting at 60. And you can see that someone retiring at that age in that plan would need some other resources to fill the gap to the recommended ratio. And then the next 4 are all based on the new plan, assuming a 1.9% multiplier. And it does assume that the para general post-retirement increase formula maximum applies 1.75 each year thereafter. And it's shown for at different points of transition. So the first example is someone who would have 30 years in the general plan, then 5 years in the new plan, shows the general plan piece and the new plan piece. So if you were looking back, the difference between the prior slide and this slide, you can see an extra wedge that doesn't look like much, but it would represent an increase in benefit that applies throughout members' entire lifetime, which is, even if it's just for a year after increase or a little bit, it's a pretty good value of what they get for the increase compared to what the contribution rate is for that member. And then it just kind of shows progressively from there. The next one shows if an example of if there's 20 years in the general plan and 15 in the new plan, and then go on to 5 years in the general plan, 30 in the new plan, to get to the point where what this would look like for the new entrants coming in the future. Very last one would show that the 1.9% multiplier applied for a full career would do a really pretty effective job of hitting that recommended ratio. I want to reiterate, recommended ratio is not a para recommendation. It's just fairly commonly used parameter by many financial consultants about what a person needs to maintain a lifestyle. So we've been through a lot of these before, showing different multipliers, but just wanted to kind of come back to looking at it based on the multiplier and the potential post-term increase that we've been talking about at age 60.
Jim?
Two things. One, Doug, on these ones with the post-retirement increases of 1.75, is that the, like I thought in terms of the plan that moving forward was the 100% of CPI, 1% minimum, 1.75 maximum. So is this one, does that 1.75, does that, the assumption on a 1.75 max would be like a 1.5, is that right? Or is that different?
So yeah, the formula that we are talking about when we shift over to cost numbers is going to be the general plan formula, which you're correct is 100% of inflation capped at 1.75, which our actuary values that the same as if it's 1.5%. In these examples, I'm making the assumption that inflation is the inflation assumption that the actuary uses for the plan is 2.25 each year. And if that assumption is met, Para's formula would provide the maximum of 1.75 each year. And that's what I'm showing in these examples, is if that maximum applies.
So the chart is accurate for what one would expect to happen in that.
If inflation is constant, the difference is that if you assume inflation is going to be the same forever in the future, the plan would give that maximum 1.75 every year. What's going to happen, what seems more likely to happen is there's going to be periods of high inflation in which 1.75 would apply, periods of low inflation, which the 1% minimum would apply, times in between. So just for these exhibits, just really assuming that an actual inflation is over 1.75 each year, and that the member would get 1.75.
Thank you. And then the other question and clarification. So on our current general plan, if you go to the normal retirement age of 66, basically what your chart shows is you're really, by the time you include Social Security, you're basically up to the 100% of the replacement ratio. And if you work a full career to normal age, if we shift to the new plan with the 1.9, then we would just be expected to edge out just a bit over the 80%. So basically about a 20% less ratio, unless one, and I just want to highlight that we're talking about a shift down in dollars, correct?
So the amount of income is going to be less in large part because the length of service is going to be 6 years less than the general. So there's fewer years of service. the overall value of getting the benefits earlier is very valuable. But the starting amount is gonna be less.
And then finally, when we're talking about 100%, replacement ratio, it's all based on the, where you come out in your high five or whatever, right? And so if you're retiring at 60 versus 66, then you'd be expected to have a different high five amount. I assume between 60 up to 66. When you're looking at these to understand them, you probably have to take into account that your high five is less, but it's a replacement ratio percentage based on a lower high five amount.
So it's comparing post-retirement income to pre-retirement income. So if it's done at age 60, then it's looking at what's the income starting at 60 compared to what was the income right before 60.
Thank you.
I'm gonna pause for just a moment because I know Coach Bennett needs to leave, and I just want to say thank you so much. This is likely to be our last meeting, so I want to just tell you what a privilege it's been to work with you on this. And when Susan called me before we started this working group, she said, I also asked Pat to do this. And I said, well, I'm only saying yes if he says yes. So thank you. Do you have any parting words before you?
I think that's good work, and hopefully we get a bill that passes. Everybody's happy. It's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot. This is good education. So thank you.
Very good. Well, let's then continue on with item 3. Any other? Are you still working through your presentation, or?
I think we'll transfer over to Bonnie and the TRS.
Other discussion?
Hello, everybody. Since the last work group meeting, Para asked us as the actuaries to run 2 new scenarios for the Para new plan. And estimates had been prepared and been discussed previously, but this was our first chance to go back and look at the proposed provisions, revisions which are actually closer to what we expect to be adopted. And so if you scroll down to page, it's labeled number 7. It might be a different PDF number, but it's the table of numbers. The first thing that we did in the new scenario is we excluded pre-89 members that in theory are eligible for Rule of 90 and pre-89 provisions. And you can see that the previous scenarios that we ran were the baseline and 1 and 2. Those are the numbers you've seen for several months. And then 3 and 4 are the new scenarios. And the first clue is that the projected earnings are a little bit lower, 185 million a year rather than 192. And that's because 68 pre-89 participants were excluded in scenarios 3 and 4. Scenario 3 can be compared to scenario 1 because scenario 2 contemplated what the cost would be if disability experience and benefits were similar to the police and fire plan. And so we really want to focus more on option 1, which was more that disability is assumed to be more similar to the general plan. So if we compare scenario 1 to the new scenario 3, the benefit multiplier was brought down from 2.2 to 1.9, and the assumed benefit increase was brought down from 2% to 1.5%. And the resulting normal cost as a percent of pay is 15.52%, which is about 3.5% lower than option 1 was. So you have fewer people, you have a lower multiplier, and you have a lower COLA. That 1.5% is the assumption we use for the general plan COLA, which, as just discussed, pays a COLA equal to 100% of CPI with a 1% minimum, a 1.75% maximum. That's what that 1.5% benefit increase assumption represents at this time. So that's scenario 3, and scenario 4 is a different COLA. That 1.75 assumed benefit increase is representative of a min of 1%, a max of 2%.
And you can see it's just a little bit more expensive than scenario 3. It's about 3.1% lower than scenario 1. So changing the, adding the excluded members, reducing the multiplier and making the COLA more similar to other plans brought the cost down as indicated in scenarios 3 and 4. And that's a lot of numbers, but I know that Kara has prepared a handout that can kind of translate these raw numbers into what does it mean in terms of employee contributions. But with that, I can answer questions either now or as Kara continues.
Okay, they do have, there it is. 9 slides total here, just wanting to kind of recap a bit about what we did ask for in the study from Bonnie and GRS team. The plan has the 2 components, the past service component, the future service component. Specifically, we're looking at the future service would have a 1.9% multiplier, unreduced at age 60. And what I'm going to summarize in the subsequent pages also assumes that the post-retirement increases is the same as the current general plan formula, and that would apply to both the past service and the future service piece. And I do want to note that it would be really complicated not have those match up. The next slide is same slide as was shown last time we met. It just wanting to be clear in some terminology about what's happening with the plans, because we talked first about the move from the general plan that it would just be a new plan created for future service, and that there's an unfunded liability for this group in the general plan. And with the new plan, that unfunded liability would be called the withdrawal liability, now would need to be funded. Then we talked about moving to a approach called a spin-off, in which you move the entire benefit structure for the members past service to the new plan. So all the promises that have been made, the formulas, everything applicable to the new plan, to the general plan for past service, that all moved over. That obligation to make those payments move over. That means the liability moves over. And then the fair share of the assets for the members will move over too. So it's a proportionate share of their assets compared based on the funding level of the plan. So that just moves over, and there's a spun-off plan that covers both past service and future service. So when someone leaves from this plan, they will get one check from the new plan for both pieces. The next is a format that had been presented before, but these numbers are updated to reflect the GRS study. It's scenario 3 of the GRS study. So it's a 1.9% multiplier in the current general plan post-retirement increase formula. And it would really emphasize that GRS notes very clearly in their study, there's an initial cost of 15.52, but that cost will decline over time. I'm showing it here as if it declines over 30 years, but as noted in the footnote, this gets measured every year and will kind of recalculate it, and it'll probably, I mean, it will decline at some other rate. This assumption just assumes it happens over 30 years. This is the cost for the future benefit accruals only. Doesn't include the cost for the unfunded liability or administrative expenses. Any questions at this point?
Your assumption, and this maybe it's for Bonnie also, but, I think a lot of people cannot retire at 60 because of, Medicare eligibility age and other things. So I'm just curious, are you assuming everybody will retire when they hit age 60? Or what, sort of very roughly is the assumption there? Because I just have a feeling that this increase in cost may be different in actual experience than what we're seeing here.
So we are not assuming that everybody will retire at 60. In the GRS letter, we have on page 6 a summary of assumed retirement rates that you can look at for the detail. But we have a small chance of retirement between 50 and 58, 5 or 6% a year are assumed to retire. At age 59, we assume 8% will retire, and at age 60, 25%. And then that rate, which is less than 100%, continues in the 25 to 30% rate until age 65. And so it does build in the consideration that not everyone will be able to leave at 60 and that there will be continued retirements over the age of 60. And, it's an assumption that will play out as this new plan gains experience, but the rates were determined based on plan provisions and based on what we've observed with other Minnesota plans and parent plans and other similar plans with a normal retirement age of 60.
That's a question. So you said 30 years, that's what you're looking here. That's a long period of time. So 2048 even for what we were talking about doesn't fit with the new layered amortization, structure that we have. So I guess in terms of drafting some of this into the bill, it sounds like we're going to exclude this whole plan from the layered amortization approach, or no?
Not necessarily, Susan. And this is all about the normal cost, and then normal cost gets remeasured every year. So it's going to get remeasured, and then it's occasionally, at least every 4 years, and maybe we would probably recommend even sooner to have a study done about the assumptions. The reason that line declines is because it's going from a mature group of initial members. And as more and more new entrants come in, that's what's going to make that line decrease. So I believe it's fairly certain that this cost will go down over time. The line will go down. What's not certain is how fast it goes down or how smoothly it goes down. And it could go up to get remeasured in a couple of years. In 2 years, if we remeasure, we find out the initial termination rate assumptions were not accurate. This whole thing could shift up. The whole thing could shift down. So the only thing that feels more certain is that it's going to drift down over time, but really what time period, I don't know. But it's all kind of remeasuring the normal cost. It's not, I guess changes would come through in the amortization if there's a new one funded.
Yeah, and that's where the layered amortization detail would matter, which is unrelated to this. I think the 30 years is reasonable because when you achieve the expected ultimate normal cost, that's when everybody who's in the plan at the beginning is gone and replaced by somebody who was hired after the plan. And there are about 80 people under the age of 25. So 30 is a reasonable guess. But the path is unknown.
Right, the next one, it's going to be focused more on the initial cost. This is now factoring and putting all the pieces together. Is that the GRS study and the cost of future benefit accruals. 15.52% initially. That will trend down over time. When we met last time, we talked about the unfunded liability piece. There's the share for that, which is about 1.13% of pay until the year 2048. Then there's the plan expenses, which we use the same expense rate that has actually occurred in the general plan, doesn't tend to change much from year to year. For the total cost of 16.86%, again, this is initial cost that would decline over time. Subtracting the 7.5% employer contribution would be a 9.36% active member cost, which is 2.86% higher than the current general plan. And that would be expected to trend. We have to talk about risks. We've already covered some of these. That we just wanted to make sure everyone is well aware that there's investment risk in this plan, risk and reward, that if the investments do better than the assumed 7%, the costs come down. Investments do worse than 7%, the costs go up. Demographic risk, so we talked about that if the assumptions about the demographics, if there's actual, it's different than what's assumed, that can make costs go up or down. If the actual contribution requirement is not made each year, that has an impact. If it's not enough, it will raise the cost and vice versa. And I think it's always worth noting political risk is that we don't always control what happens. The legislature can change benefits, costs, so forth. That could impact these things.
Can you clarify? I've wondered when I see the contribution risk, what the risk is that somebody that the 6.5 and going up doesn't get pulled out of a person's check, or that an employer doesn't. What is that? Or what does that one mean again? Contribution risk.
So there's a recommended. So what GRS presents is like these are the recommended contributions, and if those contributions aren't made, then that's going to have an impact on the plan.
If there's a choice to not follow that recommended amount.
Yeah, and I don't put it very high risk. So sometimes contribution risk is the risk about, well, what if the employer doesn't pay contributions? Or what if the members don't pay contributions? A lot of times that's the bigger contribution risk. Here it's just noted more as if the contributions are less than recommended, it's going to drive up the future recommended, and vice versa. And a little bit there is just to want to make the distinction about where we're heading next is none of the statewide plans have a contribution requirement that is the recommended amount each year. So there's always a recommended contribution, but the statewide plans tend to have a fixed rate contribution defined in statute. Fixed rate is going to change. It's going to need to change for some plans over time, but it's noting that distinction between a contribution recommendation versus an actual contribution. And I think we point this out because it's pretty important that inevitably these cost estimates are going to be adjusted. And it could be favorable or unfavorable. It's going to raise questions about, well, who pays or who benefits. It's a question either now or down the road at some point. So the contribution rate, there's many options for how this is done. I'm just putting three out for discussion. And one of them would be that I suppose you could require that the contribution rate be set at the recommended amount each year, which would start at the recommended initial and decline each year. But that's not how it's done anywhere in the state. And that's challenging in many ways. And I don't think anyone, this is not a recommendation, it's really just saying that's where you start with the consideration about what to do. Option two would be, and 2 and 3 are really just saying, well, you got to set the contribution rate at something. So you could set it at the initial rate, but believing that the cost is going to decline, you're setting it at the highest rate, which may be more than what's necessary. So you could set it a little lower. So you're under contributing for a while, then you would over contribute for a while. At least you're setting the rate for a longer period of time. And whether you're looking at this, and maybe I think the next page is probably easier because it's a bit more visual. It's a green line, or it's a black line, the one that's more starts at the highest point. That's just following that path that the JIRA study was showing. That's like the expected decline. The option 2 line would be you're setting the initial contribution lower than the recommended amount for a while. Then it'd have to be higher than the recommended amount for a while. And that one was determined assuming or trying to get to the same point 10 years in the future. And then the other option 3 would be, well, set it even lower, and you're going to have a longer period where it's too low, and thus a longer period where you have to make that up before it can drop down to where you want to go. Ultimately, I think it's going to be a need to set the fixed rate. I think that's going to be the desired approach. The question would be, where do you set that? And I just wanted to kind of put out there that there's really some options here for what to do, but you have to understand that no matter where you start this initially, it's going to get adjusted over time. These are best estimates, and hopefully the assumptions are all very good, and the costs will follow these paths. These are the options here. And then the last page, it's showing the same thing. It's just giving you more of the numbers behind it, behind these options and where you set that initial contribution rate. And so you can see under option 2, there's an initial funding deficiency because it's not enough to make the recommended. But that would improve over time. Similarly, option 3, it's an initial deficiency that would get better over time. And the very bottom row is just showing the difference between the current fixed rate, 6.5, versus what's shown in these options. But what you get.
Okay, go ahead.
Doug, do you have a recommendation for the group, which option? I mean, obviously, from a fiduciary standpoint, option 1 probably is the most appealing. Do you have a recommendation?
Yes, it'd be more like option 2 because it's option 2 is a better matching of who benefits and who contributes. So it's less shifting of the cost out to the next group. It's going to be a more conservative approach because it's going to, I think, lessen the impact if there is an adjustment to the contribution rate. right? I think that's important too. So I would say it's more like if you're looking for a recommendation, it's more like option 2. And if you're looking for what's the para limit for what our board would support, I would put that as like, if you're going beyond number 3 and saying, well, what about 30 years, 40 years? If it's like that, I would put number 3. And I was going to be careful. I don't know exactly what our board is going to support or not, but I can tell you what the staff recommendation to the board would be. The staff recommendation would not support something that is stretching it out further than option
3. Obviously, we looked at the data after we provided it, and having had a little experience on the MSRS board, I actually thought the same thing. It should be nothing less than number 2. While you get the instant gratification when number 3, the cheaper cost for the people, if you're looking at it from a fiduciary perspective, again, I hate to keep speaking on my real world experience, but being in the state patrol plan, being such a small fund as opposed to some of the bigger funds, Aaron Leonard always told me, well, we have bigger swings because of assumed rates of return not being met. And I think the SCI was 10.9 for the year. That's not sustainable. We all should know that. The market's had a real good run here the last couple of days, or a couple of years rather. It'll be returning closer to that 7, if not even under. And Doug can correct me if I'm wrong. If that happens and we do a study and show that we're not contributing a sufficient amount, then that number is gonna bump up. So I appreciate that, Doug. I would agree. Looking at the numbers you're looking at, about last time they checked, 2,248 members of the para group. That's a real small plan, right, Doug, compared to most of the plans in para.
it would be number 4 out of 4.
So I make the recommendation to the group that adopt number 2, if not number 3.
Discussion?
I guess I'm just taking it in a little bit because I don't know if we've ever made a suggestion to start a new plan where there's immediately efficiency. If it would be 2 or 3, even though your long-term projections is that it's more than the actual cost. So I'm just kind of going back and forth and thinking internally out loud on that one. I think if it is option 2 and that's where the group wants, I think it just brings back that question that Doug asked of that's not enough. It's sure we have to make clear on that it's who pays and then if there is a contribution, that's it.
I think I misspoke. Option 1 or 2.
Okay.
I might have said 3. So I apologize. It didn't click in my old brain until you spoke up. I understand the desire to have less costs closer to the target of 2%. My fiduciary brain says you're getting a pretty good package here, in my opinion. Higher multiplier, the COLA's fixed, and your profits 6 years better. I would personally, if it was solely up to me, I'd say that's a lot of bang for your buck. I'd go with option 1, but recognizing that the target group wanted was closer to 2%. That's why I wanted Doug to get his opinion each option. So that makes sense. So thank you for bringing that. The 3 on my opinion is a non-starter.
Can I ask if Bonnie, Sherry, is there anything I said that needs clarification or correction?
No, you gave us a chance to look at this information yesterday and confirm. So
So we went through this pretty in depth, and I understand your concerns and so forth. So we also have to be pretty fair to our members and where things are at. And I'll just bring up on one side of the fact that, our calculator had specifically said they would go up to 2, and we brought them up to 2.1. Going up to even 2.3 is going to be pretty tough. Probation had said we would go higher, and so, but I don't want to lose people in this mix, right? So number one, that's the first place we're at, so where we said that we would go with number 3. We can relook at it at a later date. I don't think it's that. I think we're pretty right in line with where we were at, and going with number 3 as an option is where we would say that we wanted to go after we met the number 3 solution.
But it's laid out as option 2 and option 3 as if these are very distinct options. So if the employee contribution rate is just going to be set at 2%, that's an answer too. That's going to just mean that you're going to have an assumed flat rate that will take a little bit longer to match up with as if the actual contributions are. So it's really, it's a sliding scale. You can go anywhere in between here, and if you said 2% is the employee contribution rate, that's just means it's gonna take longer than option 2 to fully fund the plan, and less, not as long as option 3, but at least it's kind of in that.
I know a lot of people are looking at me. What is she gonna say? So the reason I wanted to stay at 2 is, for the older folks who aren't gonna see much out of this plan, right? They're still probably gonna have to go to 66 to have a funded retirement. So it's kind of adding the cost for those older folks. I think, the younger folks, they're getting a good deal here. Getting them what we needed to do in this industry and get them that 60. So if we find that costs go up over time, it's going to be those younger ones who are really benefiting from this that are going to pay if it has to adjust up, and it really would if it adjusts down. So to me, yes, I would, 2.32 is still within the realm, or we go to 2, and it's that middle. And we say, though, if it does have to go up, the cost goes to the employee, because they're the one, getting this benefit. So that's where my thoughts. So whatever it has to be, to pass the boards, or everybody have to be the 2.32 to get us there, or if we think we can do the 2, and then, know that if it does have to go up, it will go up. And I think it's paid for a very good benefit. That's what they asked us to do, is to get this number down. And I know it doesn't benefit, again, people like me. It's like I am this scenario. I started at 25. That was my age, and that's how long I've been doing this. But yeah, my goal is to make this better.
I appreciate the work that Paris and Bonnie and company have put together on this. And I think by Para putting the options out there, I think the option 3 to me is still, you wouldn't put it out there if you didn't think it was still a reasonable in the mix kind of idea. When our probation group met after we had that information, it seemed like we were leaning towards the option 3, the 1.8. And I agree a lot with what Dar just said there. The younger folks, when I look at the benefit to those in the 55 and older range, I don't know that there's a whole lot here. I mean, there's some benefit to this, and it's a matter of what I was hoping for is we'd see the numbers of, okay, what if you work to 64? For all those in the transitional older age range, at what point do you actually hit the same dollar amount that as you get to 66? We got the version where it shows, hey, 5 years into the new plan, and you can see it's drastically less. And that's why I think those in the 50 and older club would be trying to figure out dollars wise to get to the full pension amount, how long would I have to work? Because it's clearly going to be beyond the 60 for many. And so I think we've all along the way tried to fight and look out for the younger up and coming probation officers and those who have yet to be hired. And they are getting I think a great option to actually have a plan that they can look towards the future on and build towards and at a pretty reasonable cost. So I think it's my leaning still would be more towards that option 3 amount. And recognizing that the youngers do get a big benefit on this. And even if that stepping down process takes a little bit, I think it at least takes a little bit of a nod in the direction of a bit more balance between the youngers benefiting something and the olders. To go back to the probation officers and say, well, there's, I don't know, you might get a bit more benefit out of paying into this new plan for 5 years, but it still doesn't seem drastically that much. I mean, it'd be great if the counties would contribute a bit more or something like that, but they're at their max. Because I think what we're hearing loud and clear. So there's my rambling thoughts.
Grant and Nathan.
I'm listening to you, Jim, and I'm always trying to figure out what's that path in between. We still have to present this vision to our board. We're going to be presenting whatever this group comes up with to our board to say this. I know I'm just thinking about in the background as I present this and the good work we've done and try to push them towards a position that's helpful. They're going to immediately say we're taking on risk. Why are we're saying yes to a plan and taking on risk? Now I agree with you. For the older folks, there's also your perspective that you brought up, which is you're paying for a benefit that you might not be seeing. So for me, I appreciate what Dar said, which is there a ground here that we can look at that middle option or something close to that middle option, and then which is still saying less than the immediate option 1, but then put some confines that I can go back to my group and say, listen, it is going to be funded a little lower those first years to really make this fair for their wages. We care about that too. We don't want to see disproportionate amount taken out of wages either. But for the risk factor for us is that there's that clause, as Dar said, that if there's contributions needed, the employee picks that up. That feels like something that I could actually go back to. So is there space on that option 2? Where you're hearing both perspectives right now. I hear you on option 3. Option 1.
But option 2.5, right? I mean, because I still think 2% is.
With language that says if we need more, to Doug's question, that it's employee contribution, I think that's critical, and maybe that's where we land. Seeing some head nods.
And is there a concern from the county's perspective if there were to be an agreement that if it needed more funding, that it doesn't fall into the counties? Is there still a concern for the counties?
For 2 reasons.
Yeah.
For 2 reasons. One is the macro reason, and that's nothing that any of us in this room can predict. But if you read the business article in any major newspaper this week, it was AI, boom or bust, right? Like we are entering, I'm looking at some of the actuarials, we are entering a period of complete instability. Every day is a question of stability. And so for me, risk factors are something we should all care about. But the second principle is that if you've also looked at the newspaper, you've probably seen a smattering of one of us quoted every single day about levy increases. The highest we've ever seen in 2 decades. For counties, it's actually more. And so, yes, Jim, you're spot on. The property tax pressures is something that we talk about with our membership. So that's why.
Ethan, and then I'm sorry.
This strength and stability of the fund in our risk profile would be the concerns with Department 3, but I think
And the only thing I would want to add is that you guys have made your position so clear throughout the whole process. I mean, that's going to be on bold on the front page of the report. There are state aids. Okay, so look at P&L. So there is this other option for funding. So I agree there is risk, but it isn't necessarily the fact that you guys are going to have to pay project happening, right? I mean, Brian Rice lobbies at the legislature every year for state aid for peanut, and he gets it.
We don't though. General aid was taken away, a correctional plan multiplier was added with no payment to us. So I would actually say recent history is the opposite of that. And so if we want to infer, hey, employees pay if there's something needed or state aid, that's great, but it cannot be an employee. I won't be able to sell this tonight.
I'm sure, I agree with them from the standpoint, you either pay for a benefit or you don't have. I would caution into entering into something that says that 7, 8 years in, the market goes sideways on, so hopefully not. That, the counties are exempt from shouldering any burden of that increase, because none of us can predict the future. That being said, I think the better option is to come to a number that we can all agree on, whether it's 2.32. You know, I'm as tight with the dollar as anybody, but you know, 2 versus 2.32 coming out of somebody's paycheck, I'm telling you, they're not even going to notice it. It's not taxed, right, Doug? And I like the idea, Doug, at least further implied that he could go back to the para board and say 2.32 based on the projections, and they've changed so many times over the course of my career that it is what it is. There's always change. Things get adjusted. I think that's a better option than entering an agreement 8 years in. If something goes sideways with the market, the employers are exempt from shouldering any burden. While I respect and understand where you're coming from, I think the better solution is come to a number and you can't sell here forward. I certainly understand what you're saying, option free. A senator like Senator Rasmussen is going to go, why are we starting off this fund with a deficit of 1.05? He's a numbers guy. That's going to maybe stand out, maybe it won't. You obviously have this projection over a 30-year period, but I as well prefer starting off on a better fiscal standpoint. So I don't know if I was rambling on or if that makes sense to you gentlemen. That's my viewpoint.
We had at the very beginning, we had projected numbers that these costs were done off, you know, in the actuary study, you know, 800 and some telecommunicators, probation and stuff. Those are assumptions. We don't have the actual numbers of people until this plan gets put into place. Because I think there's probably more telecommunicators. I have not very high confidence that you got responses from the HRs that you reached out to count yes, you know, or that those HRs knew which heads to count, you know, because they probably didn't run it by anybody in the divisions. You know, it went right to payroll, and payroll said, well, this is what I think here, you know, and went to HR and then back out to para. So, you know, it's going to be interesting. I just think there's more people, there's more turnover than we think we know, particularly for our group. So I see this plan, you know, being able to sustain itself. And again, I think it is an excellent benefit for the employee, you know, to get that 60. You need it. And I think they're willing to pay this general amount. So it has to be 2.32. I'm not against it, but again, I was just trying to keep it for those older folks who not going to invest in the benefit. I think the plan is viable, head counts, actual numbers. Closer to 2 would be my idea.
So I'm getting a Tammy Jo.
I'm going to ask Molly, you go back to slide 4 of this station. This is just a little different perspective that I want people to keep in mind, is that the orange line is the contribution in the general plan. Remember that people are moving out of the general plan to go to a new plan. What we're expecting to happen in the general plan, if the assumptions are met, is that that plan will be fully funded. And in this hypothetical, the more likely path of that is what happens when plans approach full funding. There's often a benefit improvement or a contribution reduction or some kind of combination. The para general plan just did that this past year. So we very well, if this assumption happens, we're going to see the members of that plan have that again. They'll get another post-retirement increase or contribution reduction. If you go to the new plan and you choose the lowest contribution, because you're trying to save and lower the contribution, you're prolonging how long it's going to take to fully fund that plan. You're really postponing the improvement. So that's a factor. So part of saving money, a lower contribution, part of saving money means you're delaying the progress towards something better. And that would be a factor too, that I think you want to keep in mind.
So we did our little survey here amongst ourselves, and we like the idea of kind of going in the middle. Come to an agreement if we can, and doing, if Doug has said that we could do between 2 and 3 and do like a 2%, as like the guard just said, would be the ideal. So we're not doing 1.83, but we're not going all the way to 2.34. So we could do like something in the middle of, because that would get us, according to what Doug is saying, is that'll give us some flexibility of not waiting till 20 years. And we could readjust maybe in a couple of years if need be. But it would also not put it all the way up to 20 years.
When you, I guess for para, you talked about it really is helpful for para to keep that COLA this matching. What happens, that's matching on the starting end for keeping things simple and confusion and all that stuff. But with that, with the kind of drop that the general plan would have and you could increase COLA and stuff like that, what do you anticipate these plans, if we're going to drop the COLA to match at this end, what does do the COLAs rise together to keep that? Or then it's simple now, but then it is going to get different, isn't it?
Well, it could, yeah. What the general plan is able to do will be different than what the new plan is able to do.
But the past service benefits, since we're moving everything over, the new plan, including the general plan service, is going to be under the new plan COLA. All of it is under that COLA. You're no longer having the general plan COLA applied to that past service bit.
Question I know. Well, so does that modification of the employee contribution rate, does that impact the service credit, past service credit purchase? When they're doing the actual like analysis of how much it costs you for past service credit, or is that not important? This decision doesn't impact it.
This decision wouldn't impact anything related to purchasing of past service. And I tend to look at this a little bit more as like you're coming to this with what can we afford? That's it's 2%. This is really a response. It's like more a response. Like, well, if you have 2%, projections say it'll take 15 years to fully fund this plan. That's how it is. If you say, no, we want a contribution to something different, well, it's going to change when you expect to be fully funded. So it's really, I think you choose what you can afford. And then we're just telling you, this is how we would say to set the contribution, set it at that level. And
I think what we're saying is, I think there's a willingness to try to set it to where you want to go. We're going to ask like for that risk to be at least clear. Taking on that risk if it doesn't. Because it's very clear that this is asking the plan basically at a level of risk in certain years.
So one thing is that we could put that in the statute. I don't think it will, but I think we could put it in the statute, but the legislature will just say, That's nice to see you, but we're gonna throw it out. So if we were to say 2% now, as long as an increase, what contribution? Doesn't matter if it's put in statute or not, they'll throw it out if they decide they want to increase or whatever, as you know. So one point. Second point, which I now am forgetting, is, oh, the fully funded plan. So we're talking to fiduciaries here for MSRs and para. They of course will want us to full fund. That should always be our goal. But as we look around the world, every other state, it's PRA, it's teachers. Full funding, I mean, maybe 80% is good enough. We've kind of been there for years and years and years, and maybe that's okay. Now, the plans won't tell you that, but you know, legislators on the commission will say, why do we need to be in 100%? That just means people want more benefit. So 80% is maybe good enough. So for whatever that's worth, I just want to mention that we're hearing the fiduciaries say we need to strive for full funding. Right here. He's still here. We've lived with, 65% for a long time.
Just, I hear you on the putting things into statute, legislators can ignore intent in statute, but we can't put that in the report, right? I mean, that's something we can put clearly in the report, right? Just if we have a shared understanding at least. So.
Yes.
Yeah, Joe.
This is gonna be an unpopular opinion. I'm just gonna say, we have been super understanding of where our employers are at and where we're at. But we would have a very difficult time saying that we're going to completely say forever and ever, employers are never, ever going to be responsible for any type of contribution towards a retirement plan at this point. That would be absurd. I mean,
It's above our 7.5.
forever. I mean, we can't just say, oh, 10 years from now or 20 years from now, you guys are never going to have any responsibility for this. I understand where you're at potentially now, and we've been very understanding of that, but we cannot just say that, oh, you guys are always going to never have any responsibility for contributing to a plan when you are in many other arenas. So if that is something you're determined to have in that report, it may have to be something that is your opinion. That doesn't necessarily mean to be something that's going to be everybody's opinion of the state.
Yeah, I mean, I hear where you're coming from on that. I mean, I think that we could probably work on language that, I mean, we wouldn't phrase it necessarily. I think there's probably ways we could do it.
I mean, I totally understand where we're at and the levy and then the issues that we're at where, I mean, I'm a director, right? I understand what you're talking about where the counties are at this point, but saying that forever there's no responsibility for this that's just an impossible thing to just agree to at this point.
They don't agree, let's say forever, but I think they're looking for that's something to sell, that intent that we know this is a good benefit to retire at 60, and it should cost the employee to get that at some point. So that cushion, as this plan reveals itself, when we get the actual numbers in the first couple of years, we get the data. If it has to juggle in this early phase, that it comes from the employee.
And I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we've agreed to all along. All along from the self-funded. I'm just saying that the language you guys are using today sounded more like it was way more long-term.
I'm gonna go to Jim.
Could I defer to Courtney?
I'm sorry, I had it from the back row. We also have to sell this to our members, and so I think that's why we get nervous too about something that we feel more longer term. And I know, we really like working with the counties, and so I think on behalf of the probation team, I can't speak of the guitar. We'd be happy to work with you on language that goes into the report that can say what we're comfortable with and what you're comfortable with. Because we similarly have to sell this to our members, but we can't.
I would say the PNF, just to consider, has a section called policy, and it is outlining like why and how the benefits are paid for. You could put some language there. We've been in conversations where like, and that's where the 60-40 split is for the P&F plan, in that we've been in conversations where the legislature has gone, oh, no, we don't think we're gonna do that. So like having it there doesn't bound the legislature to actually do that. But you could have it where like you have softer language that this is an employee funded benefit, like something like that, and put it in that section of statute where it's just like a nice introduction. And it doesn't, it's there, but it's not gonna bind any legislature.
100% agree.
I mean, what a process all this has been, and, you know, and it's great to just be, I mean, we're gonna get there, and I just appreciate that. And so saying that, the blunt side to me is like probation officers and the work that's happening in the communities and in the homes and putting the bulletproof vests on at the age of 64 and 65, that just rings in my head as I think of some of the scary stuff, my coworkers being checked. This is something that needs to be fixed, and everybody's here to work on that and appreciates that. Just to kind of visualize that. We're so desperate to make something happen that I think we know we're in tough financial times, the levies and that, we all know that. So this is a hard timing to do this. And so it takes a special effort to get it moving right now with this tough economic climate. And we know right now with the counties doing currently it's 7.5% and employees doing 6.5%. And we know that all the other public safety ones have a 60-40 split. We're reversing this. You know, the employee side is going to be contributing more to something that we believe is fair, is just for the type of work and risk and the wear and tear that's on people. So, you know, like I was hoping we were going to, you know, pie in the sky apparently, but I was hoping we were going to have a 60-40 split through, you know, and that would make sense. It would make sense to the legislature, it would make sense to, but the money's such a tough time. We're so desperate that there's more pressure on us to give. And we have given, and we'd like a higher multiplier, and we'd like to have some of these things. But I feel like we've given so much along the way that, you know, it's just hard to see it. You know, we're already below water on the 60-40 split, and we're not even, you know, it's not even 50-50. So I just feel like on the employer side is making some appreciated efforts and financial contribution in tough economic times. I see that, but the employee side is carrying a whole lot here.
So where are we at? Probably need to, we're going to land the plane today. Should probably.
What's the number, you guys?
I'm looking to Nathan to speak out loud, but I think that middle, Doug, you could bring up that double chart. Either way, I'll present it to our board as the conversation and the points that you made so that they can hear that. But I think that that option 2 or 1 is our preference, but option 2 is a point of consideration. I think if we did and took Courtney or Tammy Joe up on there, kind of conversation of like what could some language in the report or potentially that policy section maybe look like. I think that would give our members a little bit more. It would allow me to make them pitch harder for selling a low. So I think that's what I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably in a similar position to Matt. You know, what 2.3 or somewhere around there is something, you know, is kind of where it is to somewhere nearish there. Yeah, I mean, strength and stability of the fund is one of the most important things from the employer side of things. So that's why I just expressed as a key with option.
I want this across the finish line. If it has to be 2.32, I'm willing to do that. And I know, you know, to sell on this, but I have complete faith. Honestly, once we have the actual membership, we have the people, the names, the history, you know, we actually have that data. I think we're going to be able to revise this. My, but my bottom line is, so we need to get this to the finish line. I want this passed. We gotta get it in. Other things can happen once we finally get it into statute. We have our plan, and this is, and you know, Jim, Eric, Tammy, Joe, Nicole, all of us, you know, it's too bad it didn't happen for us and our colleagues side by side at our age. But we are doing the right thing. We are making a difference. This is going to make a huge difference in our industry. That people don't have to work past that age just to be in that same career. They can take that money, lock it in, go do something else that's healthier. They serve their duty, their public service. So if it has to be 2.32 to get us to that starting point.
I want peace in the valley. We're not gonna let perfect get in the way of good, right, Jenkins? We'd all like perfect. I'm sorry for you folks that have put in those long careers and weren't able to reap this benefit. You'll get a little slice of the pie, but I'd like to go before the pension commission and say we got peace in the valley from the directors, from everybody that sat around the table, put in those hours, because I think our chance of success is very high if we have that. If we start having people speak up in opposition about different things, it has a tendency to not go as well. So I'd like to get to that point where we have that funding status that we all think is putting us more on the path to success, for lack of better terms. So that's the LELS standpoint on that. And obviously, our dispatchers and it's big.
So I wanted to lean towards the 2%. We do have the ability to do the 2.32%, but I'm gonna, with the caveat, the fact that with the understanding that that's gonna push the employers to kind of really start really working towards this, that you guys are really thinking that's something you guys can support us getting over the finish line. Because if that's what it takes to get you there, we'll go there, right? Otherwise, if you guys are gonna be in opposition anyway, we're gonna go to, I'm gonna say we gotta go to the 2%, because if you're gonna be opposing us anyway, we might as well go back to where we're at.
And for us, you know, with this, respecting the process here, the work that this group has put in, the hours of staff and everyone has put in. Our plan is to dedicate a full board meeting to this, and depending on the recommendations of how they align with our group, our proposal will be to support. We'll have all of them to support, to be neutral, and then to oppose. And I think from a staff recommendation, Amelia and I have to touch base with Nathan, but it'll be the first in a quarter. So.
2% or 2.3?
I think we're saying 2.32%, but I'm reserving the ability that if they start in opposition, that we're gonna go back to our original one.
That's not that report language.
Yeah.
Because we are going to them so we can keep their support. If they're gonna oppose us, then I say we go back.
I haven't seen us here the entire time.
Then is option 2.
Yep.
We're gonna report with the outside work.
Yes.
What we're doing, the report language. Yeah, the stakeholder groups.
Yep.
Anyone online have comments on this before we move on?
This is Joe. Can I just express appreciation to the group? I really think that this has been a good process. And I feel like we've learned a lot about all the moving parts in these plans when new plans are proposed. And I appreciate the dialogue that everybody's brought. I hope that everybody, I feel personally like we have a really good handle on all of the different facets of this very complex policy process. And I feel like we're aimed at, I feel like there's a solution here. And I hope others are also feeling like this process serves us very well as a group in moving this forward.
Chair, I just want to point out one more thing. just appreciation to Para for finding that third thing to move it over, because that is something that does help the older folks, that we can leave, if they wanted to leave at 60 with the pot of money over here, the other pot can still stay there until they're 66. That's huge. That was huge for me, and that also is what makes 2.32. I just really like that got to that point. I'm just appreciative. I am, just like everybody's saying, that it took all this process, this time to talk through it, to make understanding. I'm very proud of this. Yeah, you and I said we'd see each other again. Years later. Yeah. And it has taken a long time, but I'm so appreciative that I think this time the carpet's not gonna get ripped out from under.
All right, so I'm just chatting with Susan here about the time. We had hoped to adjourn by noon. I think if we could finish in the next half an hour, are folks willing to stay? We avoid having another meeting. If anyone needs to get up and stretch, should we do a 5-minute break? Let's do 5 minutes. Think of everybody in back at we'll come back at 12 my boss.
Maybe
so that let's do about these three. I think so. Everybody's already been directed. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that anybody who supervises the first. Oh, Mike's are live. Mike's still live. Mike's still live. The mic.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, Megan.
I think I come in case like, right, so. We're not. So I.
Direct under contact. I missed that they added that. You're right. We need that. But one more person. You are right. We're gonna give.
So we'll try and keep things moving. I did want to, before we move on, just ask, Aaron and Jenkins, if it's possible for you to produce something like what we saw from PERA in terms of, the cost, so that we can incorporate that into, the findings of our work.
Yes, we did that a couple meetings ago, but yes, we can certainly do that. It's gonna depend on this age 60 mandatory thing. Once we figure out if we can exclude people that are 60 or older, that will change the costs.
So I think if there's any way you guys could run that with GRS to get real exact kind of, and I know it's never exact, but something that's really a little more supportive of the percentages we're going to put in the bill.
Yes, I have.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are you getting back?
So the IRS, not directly the IRS, but tax council on the opt-out, and then we're looking at this law related to age discrimination.
Okay, then let's move on to LCPR staff memo on new PERA plan features.
So I think.
Oh, can you turn it back on?
Yes. Okay, so I think based on the conversations we've had leading up to this memo, we will skip to page 3. And I think the big question really is just, are we doing mixed service for this plan? Like that's page 3, receiving retirement annuities. Our assumption is that we are doing this mixed service over the combined service approach. But if someone believes differently, that's one piece that I think I need to.
Okay, we're good? Okay.
It's within the plan. We're not crossing plans.
Yeah.
So we're fine with the mixed service approach.
Okay, good.
So that was all I needed on
Very good.
para plan.
All right, then let's move on to item 4, which is pensions and other states for probation officers and 911 telecommunicators. It's my understanding that staff has prepared a memo, but that folks who are interested could take a peek at this on their own. And we probably don't need to do a deep dive on it today. Is there any objection to that? Very good. Then we are at item 5, which really is kind of our wrap up and last call, making sure that staff have what they need in order to get this process to the next step. And so with that, I will turn it over to Alina.
Yeah, so I think, again, based on conversations now today, I will be adding a section to the MSRS subplan part about Metro Transit. I will be getting that information from Michael, Cassie, and Antoinette. We're here today to talk about that piece. The other names that I've added already based on conversations today is under the new para plan for the employee/employer contribution rates. I've now added Matt, Nathan, and Tammy Jo to come up with language about contribution rates going up, not going up, however you want to do that language and are.
Thank you.
And that's all I've added. So before I do my final question, I just wanted to say thank you to Dar and Nicole and Paula and Leah for already getting me your report sections. That is amazing. Thank you so much. It's much appreciated. The last piece is I didn't receive from anybody that they didn't want their name somewhere or that their name should be somewhere. So besides kind of adding those 2 other pieces today, does anyone have any problems with what they've been assigned or wants to be assigned anywhere else?
I think at the end of the last meeting, I can't remember, I had suggested that I get added with her and something else, just the past credit.
So all I am doing for our spare stuff is like the technical piece, and you can then send Alina the commentary about why you guys want to be. I am just doing how it works, and like that's for all of para stuff. It's just purely the technical write-up. And any commentary.
You want to be added to the past service for
Yeah,
para.
so we just want to have some commentary.
I have Nicole there.
I think that's what it was, wasn't it? There was something.
Yeah, and feel free to comment on anything else, but just send that to Lena, right?
I
Like,
can't remember who, it was something at the end of the meeting that we talked about.
I'm included in it. This is Nicole.
Okay.
And Amy, will I have access to what you're sending so that I can do my narrative, or are we sending them separately?
I would send them separately. I am again just doing the technical write-up of this is what it is, this is the function of it. And no color commentary.
Okay, and I will lean on Tammy Jo for an assist on that.
Yeah.
I guess knowing that Para is doing more of the technical piece, maybe I'll just invite everyone to look at the reports and say, is there anywhere else where people want to be adding more commentary of this is our position, or this is why we wanted 3-year cliff vesting, or this is why we wanted disability benefits to be the same as the general plan. If Para is doing the technical piece, just FYI that the commentary won't be in there, so I would invite anyone who wants to provide that. Let me know.
And when would you like that by, Alina, just so that you're not getting something after you start going down a path?
For Christmas.
Should we say, why don't we say a week from this Friday? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, we hit December 1st, so that is a week from today. No,
Yes, Friday. Oh, yeah. That might be December 5th. Yes, let's say December 5th. That's good.
That's for the initial draft too, and then you'll send it out.
I'll send it out again.
I just want to point out, we have a board meeting that we really need to focus our attention on to like prepare materials. So I don't know if I'm going to meet the December 5th deadline for all of our stuff. It may be going to try to use both of them, but like we really do have to focus on how we present this to the board.
I think it's just anything that you want to make sure that informs the work.
Yeah.
If there's something that you don't know about right now.
But it's just like the technical piece, right? Like I need to focus on the board stuff. So I will send Alina as I can. Sure. And my hope is that I can double duty here, right? Like keep something there too. But I just want to know that we are focused on get the board right.
So we need to change the dates so that we can all.
I think I would say keep the 5th, yeah, with the understanding that if I get only things, but like maybe a 12th is a nice harder deadline.
Do our best by the 5th.
But do our best by the 5th, and if I get a couple things from Para after that, that's just fine, because I'll have been working on all the things everyone else has already sent me.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to avoid is a lot of new things coming in as you're trying to pull this together.
But my concern, and I'm just gonna say my concern is that we can do an outline and we can kind of get what we want to get out there, but I think we're gonna need a little bit of Paris stuff to like fill into our report, because that technical piece for what we're talking about. So that was one of the reasons I was concerned about ours going before we even see theirs. So we'll try and get what we can to you, and then if we can just understand, we may do some adjustments.
I think we're building in a bit of a buffer by having as much as we can done next week, and then from there.
I think
it's
that's
not going to be a hard.
It won't, it's just the thing that I'm sending out will be a rough draft to everyone such that we can play around and add in, other comments and they know this section should go here, or wait, I just thought of a new idea, let's add it in.
And I think we can get outlines and some ideas in there, but I just think we'll need some of Paris stuff to actually.
And staff will have to tell us if there's a point in time where they're done taking input, but I don't see that as next week.
Yeah, and in the past, we've circulated the report and then we have gotten more changes. So it's never done until we send it to the commission, and history is that we have been late always. Not to say that we're gonna be late this time, but yeah, so we would want to get it around, but this is holiday time, and honest to God, you should probably spend time with your family, then review this report. So my first point. So yeah, we would definitely circulate it. We could circulate it 2 times, 3 times, whatever it takes.
Okay, why don't we just do a quick go around the room and see if anyone has any last comments or questions, and we'll start on this side. Just giving everyone one last chance to reflect before we close down the meeting for today. Eric.
Nothing for me. I'm good.
Jim?
Just a lot of gratitude for everyone's work, all of it. Thank you so much.
I would say the same thing. This has been great, amazing process with all of the challenges and things that we've run into and how much everybody's come together to make sure that this happened and we got here. It's been amazing. And everybody's just really come together. So thank you very much, everybody.
Let's not do it again next year.
Yeah, it's been good meeting everyone here. I enjoyed my time with you guys, and I hope that the final product can be something that we can all be proud of in the future.
Just thanks for listening to all of our presentations, all of our boring numbers. So thank you for that.
I also agree with Devin. Let's take a break. 6 years.
It was a fun process. Me and all you and hear all the first opinions.
Don't usually be fun.
Who says it actually?
Yeah, thanks everyone. Great to be part of this. Selfishly, personally, as a former telecommunicator, really grateful that this is even on the table for those folks. I'm obviously on the employer side now, so it's very different, but really happy to have this discussion here.
And for those of you that are saying this is over, you know, to do it, like we're starting with CERT in a couple of weeks. So, I mean, it's like, okay, everything will do again. But thank you all. I do appreciate it. And that, you know, I know that, you know, I have been harping on the numbers for us. And so I appreciate you listening to the whining. But it was good to work with you all.
Yeah, just echo others' comments, say thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it was a great experience. Great to experience the partnership and learn from everybody, particularly Aaron, Jenkins, Doug, and Amy. I feel like I learned a lot from everything that you guys were presenting us. Yeah. So I appreciate the fund directors for your professionalism and your ability to get such quality information, quick time turnaround without extra added costs or requests for funding. The LCPR staff is always amazing. And also the stakeholders, it's been a privilege getting to know you. And thanks for listening to our perspectives.
Sure, party word.
Well, I think I already said that. I'm sorry, I was gone. You guys heard about code red data, which. Yeah, so Washington County's one of the. Corrupted. Down here. Instead of a little notice you get in the mail saying that your data was taken away, we're gonna have to put it in this thing. So a lot of counties use it, so. No, I just appreciate everybody, you know, I'm not so late being hired, you know, the unions taking on this fight alongside of us, and but you know, we have understanding that this too for the years. So Susan and your team, you know, I appreciated them so much over the years working with all of you. Oh, you're retiring next year? Are you? Or I haven't decided. You got
If we get this passed, then I'm.
So, no, and meeting all the probation people and everything, I've learned a lot. And that's great, and I just hope I continue to learn, and it's a problem, it's prompted. Even more when that bill gets signed.
Well, I've enjoyed it. Thanks for welcoming on to the committee. I obviously enjoy pension work, and I believe Susan said it earlier on. It's a big deal to be on the verge of establishing a new pension. So, and obviously I admire the work that these men and women do, again, having come from a public safety background. So, big deal. Admire the dedication and happy, you know, we're getting close. Hopefully we'll get these staff.
I don't wanna, after we just close it up, open things up, but just wanna say, we have a definition that we've agreed to for probation officer. Yay, and so we'll send that over to you. Sorry to open it back up. Thank you, Anne, for all your time. I know you didn't necessarily sign up for this, and know you're doing something to appreciate all the time. And thanks, your staff.
Anyone online? Want to make a last comment?
I'll just say thank you. This has been quite the process, but I'm glad that we came to almost a combination. So appreciate everyone's hard work. Thank you.
Echo what Latanya said. I've enjoyed this process. I'm sorry I'm not there for the final one. But I think that it has been great and we've all managed to come to the table and make sound agreements. So thank you.
So your work is only a third done, really? We're done. So we will be circulating the bill. And we did do a first draft of the bill. There's a lot of line spaces, but honestly, it's horrible reading. I get that, but when you see a bill come out from us, hopefully we'll only have a couple iterations of each of these, but please review it. We really need another set of eyes looking at this. So just letting you know, we'll send it out, just get us comments. Nothing has to be looking good, just any comment, very helpful. Even typos, like to know those too.
Yeah, just thank you all. I popped into a work group last year, like midway through. This is the first one that I've got to sort of be a part of all the way through. And I think it'll be a fun process, and I appreciate you all sort of getting the information and learning from you all what a work group can look like, especially such a large work group and managing so many people. Got it well, and for the next couple of months we'll continue.
Well, I want to say thank you to especially the LCPR staff, Susan, Elena, and Molly. Molly, thank you for keeping us so organized. And for the MSRS and PERA staff, I know that probably wasn't your plan for the year to be informing this work. So thank you all very much, and to all the stakeholders and the folks that you represent. I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving.
And thank you to our co-chair and to our other co-chairs.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thanksgiving to everyone. Safe travels and stay safe. Thank you.